and welcome to A Drummer's Guide to, the podcast all about things it takes to be a professional musician aside from playing your instrument. So I have a cap on today because I put on this t-shirt and honestly, I feel like it was a bit too posh, so I've tried to dumb it down with a cap. What are you saying? Anyway, I hope you're having a nice day. I today would like to talk about it's an uncomfortable truth about being a session musician, and it's basically just debunking this myth that I keep seeing flying around, basically, which is this idea that if you do everything right in inverted commas, and if you get on a big gig, then you'll be in work forever, you'll be happy, you don't need to worry about it, like you will never struggle again. No. Just no. Unfortunately, that is just not the case at all. And honestly, obviously I know me, I know I've struggled with all of these things. I don't know a single musician who has not had self-doubt, suffered with imposter syndrome, dealt with failure, whether that's not getting auditions, whether that's being taken off of gigs, so already on the gig and then been asked to leave for various reasons, who have not had moments of uncertainty, of wanting to give up, of questioning, should I even be doing this? Like, it's a whole thing, unfortunately. And look, it's life. I think people maybe think that it's a silver bullet. If you can do what you love for your living, everything will be fine. Now look, I'm lucky. I am so lucky. I love what I do. But it doesn't mean that there aren't hard moments, and there are many hard moments of all those things, and there will continue to be. I know that there will be. It's part of my job. And I think rather than trying to run away from those things, which I know I did for years. I thought that if I was struggling, it meant I was failing. I wasn't doing it right, But as time went on and I sort of spoke to other musicians, I realised that not only does everyone suffer with this and struggle in various ways, it's actually part of the job description is to kind of, we're creative people, and all those doubts are actually the things that fuel us to be better, which is great. And it's a positive thing. Who was I talking to? I was talking to someone literally yesterday about this, about the fact that it's our insecurities that are the things that drive us. And actually, as I'm thinking about it right now, I don't know if you've had this experience, right? When you run into someone that's super insecure, they go one of two ways. They either become really arrogant and really over the top and throwing their weight around, as it were, or they're more vulnerable with it, and it pushes them to get better, but they probably will never feel like they're good enough. I don't know whether you find that too, but I'm just thinking about it now, and that seems to be a common reaction, should we say, to that feeling of insecurity, whether it be, imposter syndrome or just uncertainty of where your next paycheck's coming from, or whatever it is. It manifests itself in different ways. It's very, very interesting. I find it very interesting, at least. I don't know. But I think for years, like I say, I was trying to avoid these uncomfortable feelings, and I thought that you were just meant to be happy all the time. I get to do this as my living. Therefore, if I'm feeling any type of negative way, I'm being ungrateful. How dare I struggle? How dare I not love every second of this? The reality is it's hard. There are some hard moments. And unfortunately, because this is a space filled with people where it does take a lot to get to the point where you're earning a consistent living and whatnot. And therefore, people just think that you should be grateful all the time. And I felt that for a long time, and you're just grateful for any scraps. That's how I've always felt. And it kind of, look, I am grateful. I love what I do. I still struggle. Maybe not every day, but I struggle for various reasons. And that's okay. And I think not a lot of people not only talk about that, because I think there's a lot of shame involved with struggle, and shame involved with not being grateful to get to do this thing as a living, if that makes sense. But It's okay. We're allowed to struggle. It's okay. And I was trying to think about a metaphor. And by think about a metaphor, I mean make up something as a visual because it's me and I'm like, right, how can I think about this? To me, things like, for instance, let's say you have a doubt about your playing, right? I personally had a doubt about my playing. Oh, okay, this is a good version, a good example, sorry. So I really was no good at improvisation. Sorry, I sort of half said both words. That was weird. And because basically I must have had like a bad experience sometime. And it kind of, I can't even remember what it was, what it would have been. But this one little thing that will have happened, I went, either I'm not very good at that and it scares me. And I looked at that thing, and rather than moving towards it and going, oh, I should probably address that, whilst it's a small little, I don't know, a mouse, let's say. I like mice, they're cute. Sorry if you don't. So what would be a cute little thing? A chipmunk. Again, I don't know whether you find them cute. I think they're so cute. We don't get them in the UK. Whenever I go to the States, I'm like obsessed with the chipmunks. And Canada, oh my God, I'm obsessed. But anyway, it's this little cute little chipmunk, and it's, you know, it's a bit annoying, and it's like, oh, that's a shame. Now you can either walk towards the chipmunk and just go, right, let's sort this out. Let's address this whilst you're small and cute. Or you can turn your back and avoid the chipmunk. And the chipmunk starts eating. And the less attention that you pay it, the bigger it gets, until it turns into this like GMO massive beast of a chipmunk that you have created because you've avoided it all this time. You're not watching it eat all sorts of madness, and the madness is your insecurity. And for me personally, I would just avoid any gigs, any situations that possibly could ever have the opportunity for someone to just go play something like unaccompanied, without any other music, any other musicians informing, you know, what I should play. Like, my biggest fear would be either being called to do a drum solo on stage, massive fear, or being in a room with just me, my drums, and a bunch of people, and them going play something. Literally, that was my chipmunk that had turned into a monster. But the problem with this monster, and you may find this too, is that these monsters guard the doors to opportunities that you then can't even flipping well see the door, let alone walk through it. And it's not about necessarily being like, for instance, I'm not going to get called for some pure improvisation gig, but there will be something, and I know that there have been things in the past that this idea of free playing, soloing, improvisation has been a peripheral part of a gig. But I've been so scared of it that I haven't even touched it with a barge pole. And not only that, I am convinced that those doors have not even been presented to me because of the vibe that I'm putting out there in the world. I know, I'm a bit of a hippie when it comes to like energy and stuff like that. I am. I believe in it. I don't care what you think. I believe in it. Maybe you do too. But and I think that, like I say, I've now faced that monster. It's gone back down to being a chipmunk. Super cute. And actually, I quite enjoy improvising now. It's taken a lot of time. But I ended up having to face this giant monster that kind of has scared me for years. Like years and years and years. I'm talking like teenage years. But once I did, actually, it wasn't that scary at all. It's just that I hadn't paid it any attention, and it really wanted my attention. I don't know whether this metaphor is making any sort of sense to you, but I quite like the imagery of this thing sort of like guarding these doors that that are not now accessible to you because you shied away from a situation, basically. So my sort of new thing, and by new I mean, when did I start? I can't even remember when I started doing this. I remember the most impactful one, but basically this idea of facing... Well, actually, no, I remember when I first did it, but I just didn't continue it, basically. Yeah, my first time of actually facing my fears was when I failed epically at my very first recording session when I was 17, and everything went wrong, and I tried to shy away from it for a few days, and I could feel it growing, and it almost stopped me from, it almost made me put down the sticks completely. But luckily, for whatever reasons, a number of fortuitous reasons, no doubt, I decided to face those things. I think those things were scary, but it was so much more important what was the other side of the door, if that makes sense. If I faced those things, the potential for what opportunities lay ahead if I did face them was so great, I couldn't succumb to the fear. It was the same in 2019 when I started doing The Voice Kids. I couldn't really read to the level that I needed to. It's something that I had definitely shied away from. That was not a chipmunk. That was a beast. That was a beast of a beast guarding a door. And the other side of that door was a gig that was so exciting to me with people that I really wanted to be in the company of. And that prospect was so much greater than the fear of this monster that I had created over the years of completely avoiding anything that needed to be read. I did one show. It was at where was it? Oh my goodness, I can't even remember. It was in North London. I want to say Edmonton. Anna Get Your Gun. And I did that once when I was probably 19, maybe 18, 19. I didn't do a great job. I made it through. It was fine. But since then, I've literally actively avoided anything that had been read. But this opportunity, the door was wide open. I saw exactly what was on the other side. And it was too tantalizing to pass up. So I just thought, well, I guess now I'm going to be facing this monster. And it was a monster, and I chipped away at it every day for 3 months. And I did it, and it worked, and it was great. But if I'd have addressed that when it very first happened and just learnt to read, it wouldn't have been such a terrifying prospect. And it was terrifying. It was terrifying. And like I say, it's just the gig was so tempting. I couldn't resist. I literally couldn't resist. But the point is that I think when these things happen, when you realise that there are elements to your playing, or maybe it's not your playing, maybe it's something like, for instance, I know social media, for instance, that's a really good one, because I think a lot of people feel that way, that they feel that they're neglecting their social media, and then they're just like, oh, it's no big deal. I really hate to break it to you, but it is a big deal. It is part of our careers now. As much as you might not like it, and I know a lot of people don't, learn to like it, because find a way to like it, because it is the thing, that is how people are going to find you. That's how they're going to look you up if they want you for a gig. It's just really important. But if you've created a monster out of it, that can be very overwhelming. So, just do a little bit, just, make friends with that chipmunk. Let it run away, because the doors, when I tell you, it ain't just one door that's going to open with social media. It is a whole castle's worth of doors, and you really don't know what's going to be behind all of them. So it's so, for me, it's so important to face those uncomfortable things, and they're going to be painful. That's the other thing. Don't shy away from the pain. Don't shy away from the discomfort. It will be uncomfortable, and again, this is a life thing, and it's something that I've only really been realizing over the last year. And I'm 37 years old right now, and only over the last year have I felt like, oh, I understand what life is now. I understand. I've been so scared of feeling any negative type of way. I've actively avoided it, and it's turned into this monster that will take me over sometimes, whether I like it or not, because I've ignored it so much and I've tried to avoid it so aggressively, I think is the only word, that it builds to the point that I can't avoid it. Now, in a work setting, that's one thing. In a life setting, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. Again, would not recommend it. So I think just leaning into that discomfort and recognizing and accepting that things are hard. This job is hard. It doesn't make it make me any less grateful that I get to do it, and I love it. But it's also okay that it is hard. It is difficult. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be positive all the time. I'm kind of semi-talking to myself right now. And it's okay to share that. And it's okay to reach out to people. And as soon as you do, you start realizing, oh, everyone goes through this. And it doesn't even matter if it's in music. It's just in life. It's just a life thing. It totally is. But look, the way that I see it and the way that I try to approach it, because obviously I'd like to hope to give you some sort of strategy or something to help you through when these tough things happen, when bad things happen, when hard feelings come up and hard situations. The first thing is to accept they're going to happen. It's not about, oh, maybe this will happen. No, it's going to. You should expect it. You should expect it, because then you're not blindsided by it, but at least you have a way of dealing with it. At least I try to. And look, this is not foolproof. Every situation is different. Every person is different. But here's a starting point, at least. So the first thing that I will do is acknowledge my role in the situation. You know, none of us are... we're not islands. We affect everything. Everything affects us. Like, you can't just pass off blame to everyone else or everything else or anyone else or anything else. You can blame a person, you can blame the system, you can blame, I don't know, anything. But that's fine. I mean, do you, that's fine. But make sure you're part of that equation. You will have contributed to it in some respect, for sure. Like, you have to. You are not an isolated person. It's impossible. Then the next thing that I'll do is I will think about, right, how can I mitigate this from happening again? How can I make sure that this situation is less or least likely to happen again? And again, it may well happen again. You can't plan for every eventuality, but there will be some obvious markers as to weak points that if you kind of filled in those gaps, filled in those holes, things will be easier. Not easy, but easier to deal with. You will have more information to deal with the situation. You will have more experience to handle it in a more productive way, maybe. Just think about how you can mitigate these things. It's very, very important. And then the third thing to do is to take a positive action, like move in a positive way. Just even if it's something small, do something that is proactive. Because I think one of the most difficult things about this business and just life is a feeling of helplessness. And that can lead to very dark places. I think as soon as you feel like you have no autonomy in a situation, it brings with it a whole new level of downness, darkness, doubt, imposter syndrome, uncertainty. As soon as you feel like you have no control over a situation, that's when things get really dark, potentially. For me, at least, that's how, in my experience, that's what's happened. But if I can do something, even if it's something small, a very small action, just to know that I've moved in a slightly positive way from a negative feeling situation, whatever it is, that gives me back a little bit of my autonomy, a little bit of power. And I think that for mental health, that is so important, like, for sure. So I wanted to share with you just quickly, like, a couple of my sort of most confronting situations, I suppose. I've spoken a lot about this last one over the past few episodes. I don't know why, it's just the way that it is. And this was a session when I was 17, my first professional session. It was an artist called Zane Simone. I failed epically. I've never felt so awful as a person, as a drummer, and heartbroken. And I thought that I was on track to do this thing professionally. And this was just the most confronting situation that basically was like holding a massive sign up to me going, nope, you can't do this, you're not ready, and I don't think you ever will be. That's how it felt. It was like, no, you're not good enough for this. Give up right now. That's how it felt. But in the moment, I absolutely did not take accountability for my role in the situation. I blamed the gear that my gear that I was using. It wasn't professional enough. Rubbish, absolute rubbish. I may have blamed the songs. I think I probably did, let's be honest. Which again, ridiculous. But, you know, a couple of days later, I kind of came around to the idea of, and again, you know, I was just finding my way through this. This was the first time this had really happened to me in terms of drumming, and it was devastating. But I found my way around it and sort of went, all right, okay, maybe I am to blame for how this went. You know, my playing to a click was not okay. My consistency in how I was playing was not okay. My playing with other musicians was not okay. My, you know, my actual skill level of playing was not okay. And, you know, like I say, it was like all the things possible were just wrong. And that was horrible to really confront that. But I admitted that was what went wrong. And then in terms of mitigation, I just was like, well, this can never happen again. And that is the reason that I was able to move forward and kind of create a career. I strongly believe that was my turning point in my career, from turning it into something nice to be done to, no, I'm doing this. Like, there's no question. And then in terms of like moving forward in a positive way, I just started addressing those things. And look, it did not feel good. It felt horrible. It was probably the most difficult, painful, confronting experience ever was how many years that followed that. I'd say the next 3 years that followed that, in addressing those things and realizing the reality of where I was as a player, where I needed to be and where I was not, how to get there. And once I realized how I needed to get there, it was even worse because it was just even more confronting. I mean, you know, admitting that I was not good enough, not only to myself, very difficult, but therefore reaching out to other people for help, very hard for me. But I did it because, again, if you want to talk about that monster guarding the door, I mean, this was a team of monsters guarding the door. But again, like I said before, the prospect of what was on the other side of that door was so great, so tantalizing, so compelling that I could sustain the pain in the moment for what I knew could be the other side. And it was, and it is, and I'm there, and I love it. And I've been the other side of that door for a long time, and it has led to other doors that have been very much, guarded. But they've been guarded by a chipmunk these days, and I can kind of like come and face them and be like, oi, can we have a conversation? I just need to sort out this one thing, and then can you just let me through? Again, I don't know why I went down the rabbit hole of this, or the chipmunk hole of this this metaphor, imagery, whatever, however you want to talk about it. And then another thing that I haven't actually spoken about, and I will speak about in more depth another time, I actually need to speak to someone first to get their permission to speak on it, because it's involving someone else. But there was an artist that I was working with for a while, and I couldn't do a show, and I asked a friend of mine to cover it for me, just this one show. And they were like, yeah, of course, like, no worries. Anyway, very long story short, they really liked that other person, and they ended up asking them to do the gig over me. Didn't talk to me about it. And they ended up going with the other person. And that was, again, I was so heartbroken. Not just, the artist is one thing, because I get that, but this was my friend, and I felt so betrayed for such a long time. And it was so confronting, and I blamed that friend for such a long time, and just like, you know, I never did anything wrong. It was all them. But actually, you know, when I started taking accountability for it again and just going, look, you know, I recognize, there's a lot of things that were out of my control in that situation, but, you know, this is a bad thing. It's happened. I feel awful. It's given me major imposter syndrome. I mean, this was years ago. It's given me major imposter syndrome. It's made me doubt my abilities. It's made me feel very uncertain about my future and, you know, how I can move forward, and maybe I'm not good enough. And all these old thoughts are sort of like rearing their ugly head, this blimmin' chipmunk. And for a long time, I avoided this situation. That chipmunk grew, and it turned into the most beastly beast that you can think of. It was awful. But when I actually started taking accountability and going, right, okay, what was my role in this? And the reality was I wasn't providing I understood what my friend could bring to the table, and I did not bring that. And that's not to say that that's right or wrong, it's just different. But I was so focused on the betrayal, I didn't accept that maybe I could have done more. Maybe I could have brought more to the table, in terms of skills, in terms of performance, as well as various other things. So I kind of took that into account after a lot of fighting with myself that I didn't realize I was doing. And then in terms of mitigation, more than anything, it actually, I was working on those things, but the mitigation ended up being rebuilding that friendship. And that is the best thing ever, can I just say. Like, I'm so happy. I was so sad for such a long time about losing that friend. And then, that was kind of the positive step forward. And like I say, now that friendship has been repaired. We're in a place that is better than it's ever been, which is amazing. And I just feel lucky. And that was just something that happened in our friendship back in the day. And, I learned a lot from it. And it also taught me to kind of, I think now, if I had been, I would just handle it differently. But it's super, super interesting to me, at least. Anyway, I hope that is kind of, I think more than anything, I just wanted to do this episode just to acknowledge that, acknowledge your feelings, that things feel rubbish sometimes, even when you're doing what you love. Even when on paper people see you and they just go, wow, you're living the dream. Yeah, you know what, I am, but there are still elements of nightmare involved. I mean, there's these chipmunks and they keep growing and they keep guarding these doors. It's a right old nightmare if you can't play it right. But hopefully that just gives you a bit of insight into how I kind of deal with those and acknowledging them, not trying to shy away from the difficult feelings that will exist, which I've done for years. I would not recommend it. I really wouldn't. If you're avoiding these uncomfortable feelings and kind of these uncomfortable truths, that it's going to be hard. And going back to that initial thing that I said, that people think that, for instance, you get on one gig, like a well-known gig, and there you go, you're set for life. No, it is a roller coaster. You'll be on one gig for a while, people might know about you, fine. That gig will end at some point, or the work will not be as much as you think it will be, and you're going and playing functions every other weekend as well. That's okay. It's I think embracing the tumultuousness of the situation, and actually thriving in that and enjoying the different scenarios you're put in can actually be a really big benefit. And actually, in terms of growth, it's really fun and all of that. But the reality is, it's hard. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry if you think that, you see these people on social media and they're living the life and you think that everything is rosy in their gardens. I'm sure it is. But there are some weeds there, and that's okay. It's part of it. And some people go out there and get those weeds out straight away and they face them, and that's wicked. And they acknowledge them, go, right, whatever. Some don't. Some let it grow and it ends up being this whole mess that they have to address later on down the line, and they can't even get through, Check me out with all my visualization situations. Anyway, I'm gonna love you and leave you. I think that's enough for today. But I hope that you're having a nice day wherever you are, wherever you're up to. If you have enjoyed this episode, if you think that this would help anyone else, please do feel free to like, share and subscribe. If you'd like to see any other content that I'm creating in terms of being a professional musician, being a session musician, go over to my Instagram. At the moment it's emilydrums.com. I hate it. I hate my handle so much. I'm going to have to change it. I may have changed it by now, to be fair. But head over to Instagram, just look up Emily Drums, you'll find me. And if you want to join my Session Musician Accelerator program, which is just plugging up all the holes, making sure that all your ducks are in a row in terms of like doing the best you can in going full time with this session musician thing, including acknowledging that things will be hard, but then having, you know, a community to reach out to when times are hard, to know that you're not alone. You'll have access to me as well, one-on-one. We'll do coaching sessions as well as like just WhatsApp in the in-between, so that if there are things that come up, we can message each other, and I will be there for you. I will be your biggest cheerleader. I will, if only just to go, dude, I know it sucks. I've been through something similar. Sometimes you just got to hear that. And sometimes that's all I've needed to hear, to go, well, it's part of it, I guess. Because if this person who I look up to is doing it, and that has happened to them, it's just part of the process. And that's it. It's part of the process of life. Anyway, I'm going to go. I hope you're having a nice day, and I will look forward to seeing you next week for another subject. All right, lots of love. Bye.
It's almost done.